Yeah, for another fan submission today, once more from Nevermore, who has obviously sent in to the channel before the Moors of Savagery match that we had recently. He's up against Nero today, who is playing the Skaven. We'll go through the armies just quickly. Obviously, the Skaven have got a little sort of box, sort of Helm's Deep formation here. Clan Rats in the front, so 4 units of the Clan Rats overall. A couple of units of Skaven Slaves with spears on the side, along with some Rat Ogres. Also have some Skaven Slave Slingers in the front here, as well as 2 in the back. Blightscab's Plague Pack, which is nice in this tightly packed formation, particularly against a faction like the Lizardmen with a lot of sort of single entities that cause terror, because the Blightscabs do have the Demagoguery, the Rabble Rouse passive ability, which does grant immune to psychology in a fairly decently sized bubble. So obviously going to prevent terror outs, which as the Skaven is extremely helpful as a low morale faction. It gets Zap for some long range, 2 units of or 1 unit of Rattling Guns, 1 unit of Warclop Jezzails, as well as the Avalanche Mortars, who are an absolutely devastating, to tightly packed infantry and the like. So it's got a bit of everything to deal with here. Some sort of sniping potential with the Jezzails, infantry clearing, Rattling Guns good for hosing down sort of single entities once they get into range, and obviously the Zap cannon is good for just forcing the Lizardmen to you. Skaven Slave Slingers as well are a bit of I think, underappreciated. Just the amount of projectiles that they can fire, their damage does add up. We also have a Plague Priest, who obviously has, looks like Pestilent Birth, Vermintide, as well as Pestilent Breath for some breath attacks. And we have the Assassin and Snicketch double combo here. Looks like the Assassin is Rocky and Rival Hard Talisman, and the Assassin's Trophy, and the Deathmaster Snitch with his Deathmaster Sigil, as well as concealment bombs on both of those units. So pretty tightly packed little Skaven formation. Moving over to the Lizardmen. Front line of chameleon skinks, regular skink cohort, so fairly cheap throwaway infantry, good for lapping around the flanks as well. Some red crested skinks, as well as the cohort of Sotek. Interesting choice in this matchup. They do have a lot of DPS, but there's not really any armor to punch through, so we'll see how they perform. 3 units of Croxigors, good inclusion there, good for pushing through the front ranks and getting through into the back lines with their attack animations, and obviously do have some good anti-armor applications. Looks like we also have some regular skink skirmishers, so interesting choice there. They obviously, chameleon skinks are pretty much just exponentially better than the skink skirmishers, so you don't see them picked a great deal. But I guess in this matchup, there's not going to be any cavalry, so there's nothing to ride these guys down. So maybe shaving a bit of cost there is not a bad idea. We also have 2 units of Cold One Riders on the flanks here, and for the hero core for the Lizardmen, we also have a Feral Bastillodon. Like that pick because it's a cheap source of terror. We have a Saurus Old Blood, who looks to have just taken the Amulet of Itzel for the damage resistance. Obviously a great buff. It's going to be pretty handy here because he's probably going to come under a lot of fire from all the range targets, as well as the Flock of Doom and Manticore Summoner Skink Priest here. So we'll pop it on fast play because there's a bit of sort of posturing, but we see the Plague Claw catapults coming in, just softening up the front, the infantry in the front. Now, what you want to do, because it causes so much disruption, the Plague Claw catapults, you basically want to rotate your target in every volley. I mean, look, they don't need another shot from the Plague Claws. So yeah, this is really good play from the Skaven player, and that's obviously a really high priority target here. It's actually probably going to, it's just baited out or refused to die as well, which is probably going to be wasted now because looks like the Skaven player here, Nero, is on top of things with their micro, and he's going to once again rotate his targeting. So that's really good play. We see the Avalanche Mortars here already up to 48 kills with their first 4 volleys, and the Lizardmen player here is just sort of waiting to envelop and attack at once here. But the Zap is taking out a couple of Croxigors, needs to get moving with these Cold One Riders. Doesn't want to take too much Warclop Jezzail fire because they will pick off unit models quite well. But you see just the damage on the infantry, already had a unit of Red Crested Skinks and a unit of Skink cohorts routed off. need to have this infantry engaging quick smart, need to get these Cold One Riders. There is quite an exposed rear here, so I mean a charge from these Cold One Riders will probably rout off these Skaven slingers very, very quickly. But there is the Blightscab's Plague Pack back here at least, who may be able to respond, but this is a good play here by the Lizardmen to get in nice and quickly. And now you see just the tight formation of the Skaven probably gonna almost start working against them, because there's not a lot of room for the mortars or the slingers really to retreat to. So the early value of the shots has obviously been significant, but probably we're going to see the tables turn just slightly here in the favour of the Lizardmen as they start to get some favourable engagement. So obviously a Manticore summon going down here would be really nice to get a terror out and possibly pick off the Zap cannon, just to allow the Old Blood to be a bit safer. But we do have the Plague Priest being targeted by the Old Blood, as well as some poison shots here from the Skink Skirmishers. But Snitch and the Assassin are looking to team up now and work down this Saurus Old Blood. He did have the Amulet of Itzel, so that's a really good pop there. Obviously significant damage resistance, and that's against all damage types. And we see just the Skaven here have actually held up really well. You know, the Clan Rats here are probably going to be able to finish off these last couple of Crocs. Oh yeah, well definitely now with a couple of shots from the Zap cannon. But the Manticore here hasn't really been able to do as much work here, because the rabble rousing from the Plague Monks has been significant and meant that terror routes haven't taken course quite so badly. So we're in a very sort of volatile situation here with both forces basically on top of one another. The Skink Skirmishers are actually probably getting some decent value. There's some good targets for them in here. Obviously, you know, these Clan Rats aren't shielded, or these are Skaven slaves. The Rat Ogres obviously are very susceptible to that kind of small arms fire. And yeah, you see here just these Rat Ogres are really actually getting pincushioned down by these Skink Skirmishers. So this is actually a bit of an underrated pick here from the Lizardmen player, from our friend Nevermore. We've got our second Manticore summon going down, and obviously the Old Blood has taken a lot of damage from Snitch and the Assassin, and he's been forced to pull out. But we're getting the remains of the Cohort of Sotek here are going to deal with the War Clutchers very, very quickly. That's a good target for them, just to eliminate any sort of burst damage that the Skaven might have. But there is a sort of a nasty little pocket here. I mean, there's a few Rat Ogres left. There's a lot of bodies here at least, but they are mainly Skaven slaves and Clan Rats. Although we do have some regrouping infantry, and with the rear charge here, we might be able to rout off these Croxigores and Skinks. And if the Plague Pack here, Blightscabs can hang on, you know, the Manticore is probably going to degen in a sec. This Old Blood's probably going to actually die. Yeah, this that's a really nice pickup by the Skaven player here. So a really good snipe here of the Lord here. He's just really stayed on the hammer there with Snitch and the Assassin. And now the leadership of the Lizardmen is looking in a bit rickety. I would probably almost be tempted to get these two to go off and snipe. They'll kill that Skink Priest very, very quickly. But the Skink Skirmishers here are proving a pretty sage choice. All these guys are unshielded, and they're just being harried off by the Skink Skirmishers. And obviously with the blob forming here, the Flock of Doom is relatively nice. Blightscab's Plague Pack has now been routed, and you doubt they'll come back with such low hit points. And now this Feral Bastillodon may actually be a bit of a terror for the Skaven. Obviously the cheap source of terror. Not a lot of units left for the Skaven here. We're sort of getting a lot of the remnants being screened out from by the Skink Skirmishers just with their little blowpipes. You know, still got 90 unit models here, all firing. Likewise over here, 80 unit models. We've got a Cold Blood going down on these Cold One Riders, so it might be some cycle charging. But if there's one thing that is saving the Skaven at the moment, it is that the 3 real units left are all heroes. And we do see in the distance, it looks like the Avalanche Mortars have actually routed. So if they can be used to take out the Skink Skirmishers here, and the Snitch and the Assassin can sort of hold out for a little bit longer, although I don't know what's happening with these shots. They seem to be very inaccurate. The Croxigors here, 5 unit models left here, 5 on that model, but it's sort of at the point now where they're both so damaged that a single attack animation from any of these characters is probably going to be enough to kill a unit model. And their leadership isn't great. And obviously with a lack of leadership from the Old Blood, there is the encouragement and possibly some Cold-Blooded from the Skink Priests here, as we see some Skink cohorts coming back in. It looks like this unit of Cold One Knights has been detached to go and deal with the Avalanche Mortars, but they may get a couple of extra shots in. Bear in mind that that's not going to do a lot of damage to, not a lot of friendly fire, at least to the Skaven, characters, as they are all single entities. Some Rat Ogres here may be able to pull back into the fight, but probably will get shut down by the Cold One Riders. And we see now just the fact that there's heroes on the board for the Skaven is maybe going to be what tips the balance of power in their favour. He's held a few summons in the back pocket here as well. Looks like the Avalanche Mortars are going to be going down here thanks to the Cold One Riders, but this summoned unit of Clan Rats is doing a good job here actually to rout off these Skink Skirmishes. I think this is actually a mistake. These Clan Rats need to probably go after this and need to keep this from routing. Because the shots here, the Rat Ogres, very low armor, 30 armor, even though they have some physical resistance as well, Deathmaster and the Assassin will actually take more damage than you'd like from regular Skink Skirmishes. And this is good from the Lizardmen, obviously pulling back, waiting for the Clan Rats to dissipate, picking off the Rat Ogres. He's got, what have we got here, 14 cohort of Sotek, fighting to the last in here, so that's nice. These Croxigors are probably going to rout pretty quickly. Like I said before, a single attack animation from any of these heroes is going to kill a unit model. But we have some Cold Ones coming back in right now, and I think if the Lizardmen can sort of separate these Skink Skirmishes and use the majority of this ammo, they may be able to get enough damage down on the heroes to maybe take out the remainder of the Skaven force here. This is where a Whirl of Weeping Blades would actually be really, really powerful on Snitch. That would pretty much finish this entire sort of Lizardmen contingent here. And if he could get in and amongst the Skink Skirmishes, even popping a Whirl of Weeping Blades here, we do see some wavering on the Skaven characters, and the Skink Skirmishes here really didn't think I'd ever say this, but they're actually proving to be potential match winners here. The poison as well, very significant to debuff the speed to allow them just to kite, and we see a fair bit of damage actually being taken here by Deathmaster. He's sub 500, he's got concealment bombs pop, that's pretty handy, so he's not been able to be spotted here. He is hidden. And likewise the Plague Priest, has some missile resistance as a single entity hero, but I think at this stage the Skinks may be able to just finish these guys off just through weighted numbers at the moment, although ammunition is running low, and we see the balance of power here actually moving massively in the Skaven's I'm actually shocked that that's turned so quickly. They're both wavering. We can see here that they are both wavering. And these guys were obviously Skink Skirmishes probably don't hold a lot of sway on the balance of power, particularly considering I think one of the units was completely out of ammunition, but that is basically as clutch as it gets. I think if army losses had held out for another 3 or 4 seconds, I think both of these would have actually broken and potentially both routed, and that may have been a Lizardman victory. So that is about as down to the wire as you can get in a pitched battle. So yeah, obviously this has been sent in by Nevermore, so always big props for sending in a loss, but understandable given that's about as close a game as you'll ever see. So obviously the early game went very well for the Skaven. A lot of different sort of shooting here meant that they were pretty well able to deal with different targets. Skaven Slayers sort of didn't get much value because they got boxed in nicely, but fantastic micro with the Avalanche Mortars. Pivoting from target to target after every volley is pretty essential with if you want to use these right. Obviously one well-placed volley from these can just about tank any infantry unit, and that includes like high value things like Chosen, Blackguard, even Silver and Guard, things like that. A single volley from this can do about half HP damage, and because it causes so much disruption, the second volley is rarely as effective as the first. So, I think this is probably the skink cohort unit that got targeted in the start. He then got a good volley on the red-crested skinks, and then had to pivot onto another one. So that was really good play by Nero there. But I think we saw the effectiveness of the Skaven shooting sort of start to diminish once the Lizardmen did get a bit of a wrap. If anything, the Lizardmen probably could have engaged a little bit quicker and probably had those Cold One Knights in the back working down the Zap cannon, who did get a bit of damage in on the Old Blood. But some good ganging up. I mean, Deathmaster Snitch with his little ensnarement ability, the sigil, is actually really good for taking out big targets like this, because you can get rear charges which bypass melee defense, and obviously Snitch and Assassins have great damage values and great stats in their own right. Like the inclusion of the Plague Priest just for a bit of summoning to plug up gaps. But yeah, all in all, I like both the builds actually, and I think pretty effective builds, and that's reflected in how close the game was. The Cold One Cav getting round into the rear a little bit earlier may have helped, and the Skink Skirmishers, like I said, their biggest sort of drawback is just being hunted by cavalry and not having as good a missile resistance as Chameleon Skinks. But I think this is probably one matchup where you can maybe cut the points on Chameleon Skinks and take Skink Skirmishers. Obviously, Skaven don't have cavalry. These guys are probably going to be just as effective as Chameleon Skinks at beating down Rat Ogres and things like that. Even for just poisoning Hell Pits and things like that, to allow them to be pinned in place by things like Cold One Cav. So it's not a bad pick in this matchup. And they nearly carried the day at the end there with just the weight of fire. He was able to keep them very healthy. So, yeah, thanks once more to Nevermore for sending in another great game. As I said, I think if those skinks had lasted another probably 3 or 4 seconds, I think the Assassin and Deathmaster both rout there, and that's game. And that's game for the Lizardmen. So, literally beaten by the buzzer, but always props for sending in a loss. So thanks once more for contributing to the channel, Nevermore, and thanks to everyone for checking it out. And until next time, take care.